Welcome back. I am Trisha, and we have some breaking news for you. As you remember, a few weeks ago, we talked about the Bibbles taking over New York, and they were finally locked up and not able to escape, but one of them has broken out, and he is now ready to speak out about why he has made the decision he made to start Bibble Nation. I'm going to bring it over to our reporter right now who's over there on the scene. Bobby?
Yeah. Hello. I used to be a former Popeyes employee as well too, just to keep that in the loop. It looks like Bibble Nation has been taking over lots of this globe, and we couldn't actually get any footage with him because he was watching Drop Dead Diva on Blu-ray, and it's not even possible because it's not a movie, but somehow he got a hold of it, and there's a movie that's made. It was made by Bibble Nation. So, back to you.
Wow, that is... We'll have to keep a lookout for those Bibbles. They seem to be getting out quite a bit. And y'all should look out for the Bibbles too.
Watch out for those Bibbles. They're everywhere.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome back, or welcome if you are new. I'm Christina, and this is my brother Spencer. We started this podcast to just kind of talk about really anything, everything, to kind of hopefully help with communication, which definitely seems to be a problem nowadays. If you have anything that you would like us to talk about or kind of go into more that we've already talked about, you can always let us know on our socials, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can let us know in the comments below. And we're now on Spotify!
Yeah, we're now on Spotify. Let's go. Yeah, we'll end up putting that closer to the top. I see that we've gotten some posts on that as well too. I saw that on Instagram. So y'all will be kept in the loop on social. There'll probably be more posts as well too. Just so y'all are aware and updated for it, because it's going to kind of skew the listeners from YouTube to Spotify or wherever you choose to. It all depends on your membership, because I used to be a YouTube person, then I switched over to Spotify. So it's whatever your choice is with it. So yeah, tune in on whatever, share as you can as well. I'm sure there's a lot of value that you gain from it, or maybe you don't gain any value, and that's all right. Every episode is like to a different crowd and individual, it seems. It just depends on what your taste is, because there's a lot of people out there, and communication requires a lot of different ways of going about and explaining something for somebody to understand. So yeah, share it, like it, subscribe, and let's get into it today.
Yay! Do you have anything on the top of your head that you want to talk about?
There wasn't anything particularly. I think it was more important to explain where you just came from, because this is a little bit later of a recording.
Yeah. I went and saw a movie with our mom. For those of you that haven't seen like the other Hunger Games, this is like, I guess, the prequel to the Hunger Games. Did you ever watch them?
I think I've watched a couple of the movies. I may have seen one in theaters, actually. It's just really hard to remember, as I don't go to the movies too often, nor do I follow the storyline entirely. I will say I have read one of the books, though, and the books are fairly good. I don't know beyond probably the first one, though. But it was a very good book when I did read it. It's hard to recall now. There's a lot of information in between that.
Yeah.
But all I know is that people should definitely tune into that. It's definitely a good one.
Yeah, no, the prequel is really good. It was like almost 3 hours long, but it did not feel like that. Like, it was definitely really good. You definitely, for those of you that don't remember or haven't seen the Hunger Games, it's basically like these set of like games that they put on like every year. And they take someone from each district, there's 12 districts, and they basically have them fight to the death in this arena. And the president who like runs, I guess, this country, as you would call it, or area, place, is President Snow. And so the prequel kind of goes into his backstory of kind of like how he came to be President Snow, which I really liked, because like in the Hunger Game movies, they don't focus too much on his story. So like, he's basically just the villain the whole time, and you're like, oh, he's just a horrible person, like he doesn't care about people. But in the prequel, you get to see like he wasn't always that way. Like, you see kind of the events that led him to be the villain and to not care about people's lives or anything like that anymore. So I thought it was really cool. If y'all haven't seen it, you should go and watch it.
I have a question that arises from that ties in two things. I know you're very related with like pop culture and TV shows and movies. And what do you think the difference is in the portrayal of a story that's on a show versus in a movie? Do you think like one's more in depth? Do you think one's less in depth? Like, what do you get from each one? And what would you say is your favorite? Do you like watching a show over a movie? Like if you had to choose?
It's so weird because I feel like I like watching a show over a movie, even though technically a movie is less time than a show. Like you have to put more time into a show than a movie. But I think it's just the fact that like, you know, one episode is only like 30, 40 minutes. So it's like, okay, if you don't, you know, you're like, hey, I need a break from this, you can stop. But like a movie can tend to be, especially nowadays, 2, 3, 4 hours even long. You gotta like sit through the whole thing. So if you like stop halfway through and go and do something else, like you're just kind of missing like part of it. I don't know. I feel like you need to be like watch the whole thing to be more in the story, and especially to like understand like the characters' emotions as well. But I feel like they are definitely better at explaining like backstories and like side characters a little more in a show than a movie, because they have more time to do that. And also, I don't know if you like notice in shows, but like, you know, like they'll have a season come out and then obviously everybody gets to watch it and then they get the feedback from the fans before, you know, the next season comes out. So I feel like, especially if like fans definitely are drawn to like a side character more that like isn't really in the show as much, and the writers hear that feedback, they're like, okay, well, let's bring this character in now. Like, let's develop more of their story so they're not as much of a side character. So I also like that about shows. But then, you know, I mean, I guess they do this in movies, but you're affected, but not as affected as a show when they kill off characters. It's the worst in a show, especially if they have like multiple seasons after. You're like, why would you do that to me? What am I supposed to do now? They did that in Grey's Anatomy to so many characters, and I think it was more like the actors were kind of done with the show and they needed a way to like write them off, and I guess killing them was the only way. So
yeah, that does make sense. I would think that they have things in their life that might have happened, or the drama that happens behind it as well too. And I think that is like the best way of most shows is to show that happening. Like in Fast and Furious, how they had to get rid of, I almost said Dom. Is it Dom?
No. It's
what's his Paul? There we go. Yeah. But that's not his actual. Is it?
It's not the character's name. I don't think. But that's
I feel like I'm just tripping. I haven't seen this in so long. I've seen all the Fast and Furious movies except for the newest one. But I feel like it is Paul in there.
So
I feel like it's Paul in real life and Paul there. Now I'm looking stupid because I'm pretty sure everybody knows that. Because I'm pretty sure that let's see.
It's been so long. I don't think I've watched all the movies, but it's been a long time since I've seen them. But I know for sure that
Brian, oh my God, yeah, I'm retarded. Because I would know this, literally. I would know that it's Brian. Anyways, Brian getting killed off going into the next ones. And I don't know if they're grossing necessarily.
He doesn't, though.
What do you mean?
Doesn't his brother
play him? That's actually, I can't even look that up. Like, I don't know if he's actually a part of that.
I don't think they killed him off. I think that the next movie after, his brother played him. And then I think they like somehow wrote him off. I don't think he ever died in the series, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Leading to Brian's retirement in 2015's Furious 7. So, this is from ScreamRant.com. So, I'm assuming, yeah, based off of that, his retirement was in 2015. So, Furious 7 was his last one.
So, he just retired in the movies.
Yeah, which I swear he died. Like, in the movie, it had shown that he had died. Like, I know, at least on 6, they had that plane scene at the end, and I think the person who died was the Asian guy. You're probably not recalling because you don't know these ones.
I was like, I don't know if I've ever even seen that one.
I recall specific types of scenes in each one, but it's very hard. Like the one that's probably the most notable is one that I actually reenacted on Snapchat. I have a friend that will know exactly what I'm talking about with this one. We were in a parking garage and there's a specific song that plays when they're like racing, and it's like, I believe in like the second movie. and it's like din 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 din, and we did that going down there. We might link that, but
We'll just put the clip in.
it just randomly came up, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do it. And this was probably like 2 years ago, and it was in one of the parking garages downtown. But yeah, it was something that was reenacted. A little bit off track there, but the idea behind the movies and them killing off is it's pretty interesting to see where their character falls, because a lot of people will just dislike how they did it, but others will be like, it's perfect. And what do you think is actually the determining factor with that? Do you think it's a specific company like Rotten Tomatoes? Do you think it's like smaller groups that have the importance to that? Like, how do you come to that decision as well? Like, do you factor those in, or are you just like, you only focus on your own opinion?
Like for
deciding on how, like, for instance, in Grey's Anatomy, somebody who died in there, did you kind of have that idea within yourself, like, this is terrible? Or did you kind of find like a group of individuals that like had stated that and you're like, you know, that's a good point, and then you agreed with that?
I mean, I think like most of the deaths I've seen in like shows, like I feel like they do it very well. I don't agree with it, because I don't think that they should have killed off a character. And I feel like the most reason that doesn't make any sense. Like the biggest reason why writers do it is so they, like, the character story's done. Like there's no chance that they could rewrite them back in. Because if you have someone that just retires, or like, you know, goes off to a different state or does something else, like there's still a chance that they could come back. So I feel like by killing a character off, it's like it's done. Like, we're not bringing this character back. And I feel like it's kind of like to help get like closure to the fans. Because if you don't kill them off, then the fans are always going to wonder, oh, are they coming back? Are they coming back? Oh, that was a hint. Maybe they're coming back.
But isn't that good for the projection of it, though? Because then it intrigues people, and they're able to bring them back. Because this has happened in shows as well, where like they'll move away, and then all of a sudden they come back in like 2 seasons later. And typically I would think in that case it's probably because they had a kid or something, so they're having to invest a lot of time in that in their real life, not on the show.
There's also spin-offs. There was a character in Grey's Anatomy, Addison, who left. They actually showed it in an episode of Grey's Anatomy. She went to LA and she went to a private practice out there, and she actually had her own spin-off series, which is why she wasn't in Grey's Anatomy anymore. But then like a lot of seasons later, she ends up coming back to Grey's Anatomy because that spin-off ended, and I don't know, I guess she wanted to come back. So I don't know if she's still in it. I haven't seen any of the like new seasons, because I heard literally the main character, who it's named after, she's not, she is like, okay, I'm done with the show. Like, that's it. So now it's basically like all new characters to start the story over. Which, I don't know, like sometimes it can be good and sometimes it can be bad. An example of when it, like, I didn't like it. I feel like some people did. It was Gossip Girl. When they did the reboot, it, like, all new characters, like there wasn't like an old character that was in there. I think maybe one of them might have made like a cameo or something, but it was just terrible. Like, it wasn't the same. Like, they were trying to base it off of like, because Gossip Girl came out in like 2008 or something like that, and so they were trying to base the new Gossip Girl off of like this time period now. And I don't know. I think they did well with this time period. I just didn't enjoy the show. I got like 1 episode in and I was like, no, this isn't good.
For reboots, what do you think, who did well with reboots?
I'm trying to remember if I've like, I don't think I've seen like any like reboots that I can remember. I know iCarly did a reboot, but I never saw it. And I know they recently just got canceled for another season, so they won't be continuing that reboot anymore. But I don't know of any of the reboots. But
okay, what about well transitions? Like somebody that was like gone and then came back. What do you think? What show do you think did a good job with that you've seen?
I can't even think of one. There's so many shows.
Well, I think that's the thing, because you consume a lot of different TV shows. So like it kind of clusters together with that. I don't know. It would be kind of weird, but do you like take notes on all of that, or are you just like, nah, like
No.
that just doesn't seem right?
What do you mean take notes in my class?
To like recall it, because I think like our memory, right? Like our storage banks, they can get overloaded with that, because then you start overlapping different memories with things, and like I don't know how you would position that off.
Yeah, hold on, let me grab my school notebook real quick. I can tell you. No, I like to rewatch shows though, and I think the reasoning behind it is because I know how the show is gonna end, and I like to know the ending. I do the same thing when I read books too. I will read ahead. Because I'm like, if something happens to this character, or if these two characters don't end up together, I will be upset. So I'll like flip ahead and be like, okay, we're still doing good.
Really?
Yeah.
How does that even work? Like, because I feel like you just drop yourself off at another point in the story. Like, how would you even know what's going on? Like, sure, you probably read a paragraph and a page, but
if you've read enough of the book, like even if you flip ahead a little bit, like you'll still like, there's names in there. You'll be like, okay, so so-and-so is talking to so-and-so and they're talking about this, and you're like, okay. Like you kind of understand what's going on. But yeah, it's a bad habit, and I shouldn't do it.
Did you ever cheat in school?
No. I actually didn't. But I was like the kid in school that everyone was like, did you do your homework? Can I copy off of you? They'd be like, oh, what'd you get for this? Like, I was that kid. Even though, like, I wasn't, like, super, super smart. Like, I didn't like school, but I mean, I just paid attention in class, and I think we talked about this in another episode where school is just about memorization, which I was good at doing. So I think that's why I did well in school.
Yeah, 100%. The reason why is because like that skipping aspect, I feel like a part of your adventure is the entire journey, and you were just like, no, I want to make sure that person's okay. Do you go back, or do you just like stop reading that night? Like, how does that work? You jump ahead. Do you just go back to the same part?
Yeah, I just go back to where I was reading. Once I get my answer of like, okay, so things are still going well, I'm like, let me go back to reading then.
Have you done that with shows?
I don't go and watch like future episodes, but a lot of times, at least on Netflix, they do this, where if you like scroll through the episodes, it'll give you a brief description of like what the episode's about. So I'll read through those and be like, okay, so this character's still there, this character, you know? Like, I don't know, there's like this part of me that like, I can't continue watching what I'm watching unless I know.
Yeah, but that's a part of the anticipation, though.
But I don't want it.
Have you got to points in a show where you're like, I just can't watch this, and you have to wait like a week because you're just like, I don't want to know what's happening next, like because it's that chaotic?
I've gotten to points in show, like I feel like if it gets chaotic, I'm like, that's when I'm binge watching episodes.
Okay.
Like the last show I just finished, Ugly Betty, like it was getting to like the last couple episodes, and I was like, okay, next one. And I was like, I normally watch it like when I'm on my lunch break, and it was the second to last episode, and I finished and my lunch break was over, and I was like, no, I need the last episode. And so literally like as soon as I came home, I'm like, okay, let's go. What happened?
Was it as soon as you got in the door, were you driving watching it?
No, that is horrible.
People
oh my God.
have been doing that. I've been seeing people on the road, and literally in the morning, and then all I see in this little corner piece right here is somebody watching a show. I'm like, are you kidding me? You can't differentiate that. You're literally driving doing that, and you can't wait just to see the show? Because if you wanted to see the show, wouldn't you just change up your routine a little bit differently? I don't know, like stay up later? Why would you do it while driving? And it's not even a long drive.
I don't understand how they're like paying attention to that. That's like people like this irritates me so much. Like I've known people that do this, but they'll be watching a show and they'll just be on their phone while the show is playing. Yes. And I'm like, sweetie, you're missing the story. Like, what are you doing?
But somehow they're picking it up is what they claim as well. Because they believe that they're like a master multitasker. So they're like doing both, and it's just like, nah, fam, like we are able to do that, but like extended periods, there's gonna be someone on your phone that's like grabbing more of your attention, and then you're gonna miss a part of the story, and then they're gonna have to rewind it to a certain point. I don't know about that type of consumption. I don't get that. I feel like that's overstimulating. Like me personally, when it comes to Instagram and all of the different platforms, cannot be on them that long. Like minimum, like maybe an hour, and that's like max. And that would probably be for the week typically, because I just do not use them. I do not like using them because I'm like, bro, there's so much stuff outside. There's so much stuff that you can see outside of that. Like, it's hard for me to actually watch like those type of entertaining videos. Like, sure, I'll watch TV shows every now and again. Like, currently I'm watching My Hero, which is an anime, and I'm not anime affiliated in any way because I've never really liked anime. I think that's just a family thing. Because I talked to our brother about this the other day, and he's not anime thrilled either. But I had close friends that were telling me about this one, and I was like, you know what, I'll watch this one. And I do enjoy it because one thing that they do well is actually represent wisdom and greater lessons in that you can be the hero within inside of you. And it's very cool how they animate it all. And it's not like the hardcore anime where they're like 5 minutes like just fighting, but it's just showing pictures of their face and like somebody talking in the background. They're not even moving their lips. I'm like, that's annoying, because I remember back being a kid when we were talking about Pokemon, and it was just like Pokemon play on the screen after I think Avatar: That Last Airbender came on, and I'm like, bro, this is stupid. What is this? And that has probably deterred me for a long time. And somebody may argue like Avatar: The Last Airbender is anime, but then the anime people are definitely gonna be like, nah fam, that's a cartoon. There is a difference between the two. And I absolutely agree, because Avatar: The Last Airbender is a cartoon. Anime, you can tell the difference between them. Also, there's subs and dubs. Whereas I don't think that even is a thing for Avatar: The Last Airbender. Subs and dubs is basically either the difference between you seeing English on the screen and them talking in the other language, and then one where they're talking in English and you can have the subtitles in English if you wanted to. I don't want to get this wrong to confuse them, but I think dub is the one where you have both of them, because sub is usually, I think, indicating subtitles. So
that would make sense.
Yeah.
For it to be subtitles, yeah. And the other one would be, but I mean, their mouth isn't matching up with the words. It's just somebody dubbed over. No, they do. It depends. It depends on the anime. Oh, okay.
Like, yes, when you're talking about subs, yeah, they're not gonna match up, because
I used to like hate, like I couldn't watch shows that like somebody like redid it in English and like you could like understand it, but their lips weren't matching up because it was still like the same actors that were acting in it. They just like were, basically saying it in English. That's like old videos too. Old videos of people who would, I don't know, like even before Vine and all of that, like you would see, I don't know, somebody talking at a church and it's like, on the camcorder, and they are not in tune or in line, so it's terrible. And you could go back, they have very important information, but it's just not in timing. I don't know what happened or who posted it, but it just did not work out how it was supposed to be. I mean, technology wasn't as advanced as it is nowadays, so I mean, of course, you're recording on Billy Joe Bob's camcorder. I mean, the audio and video might not match up, but at least you got both. It will not, because he dropped it in the pool about 3 times, and then he's like, it still works, and it is recording, but it's just like, you get some bad audio quality, and you don't get what you're trying to look for. Starting to sound like Stitch. Oh my gosh, yeah. I believe like a lot of like shows like that, like My Hero, has taught a lot, but outside of that, in media and stuff, it's harder for me to consume that other stuff. Like, I'm shown it, and of course it's funny, but just to see it every day, I think that starts to mess with like the computer in you a little bit, because that's where AI might have that sense of advancement, because they are a computer that is trying to take your attention, but who is giving you the attention? Well, people are, because they're making money to get your attention. That's what media is. I mean, you can even say that currently, that's what we're doing with people. But that's, again, not the idea. The idea is to spread information and value with it. And yes, are we on those platforms? Of course, because there's a certain sense of noticeability when it comes to stuff. I guess it's where people deem where their values are. Because somebody may be using TikTok actually for like DIY videos. I actually have a friend that watches it for that. I'm like, interesting, because I thought they would watch it for other TikToks. They do 5-minute crafts? Yeah, 5-minute crafts.
I mean, it could be less too. I don't know the limit on TikTok. There's so much that's changed, and I don't know a lot about it. Same with Snapchat.
Wait, they're watching 5-minute crafts for their DIY projects. Have you seen the 5-minute craft videos?
What do you mean, like the craft cheese, or like what?
There's 5-minute crafts, and they make these ridiculous videos where like like the thing they're making makes absolutely no sense. Like you could have bought that for less than the amount of time it took you to make it. Like they just like this lady will have like a shoe on, and she's like, oh no, people can see my toe because my heel has a hole in it. She grabs a marker and colors in her toe to match the heel. Those are the types of things that you see on 5-minute crafts.
Let's go. I guess it depends on what your algorithm is. I didn't know that was on yours. That is insane.
I have this lady that like basically makes fun of the 5-minute crafts that I see all the time on my TikTok. It's just like, I don't understand who is making these 5-minute crafts videos and who they're making them for.
Well, apparently you, because you were getting humored about that. But it is funny.
I'm not gonna do the 5-minute craft.
No, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of encouragement behind it. I feel like there's a lot of motivation.
You're like, wow, I'd love to go and do that useless thing.
What if it's the same thing every week? You just wear like a different shoe.
They would do some stuff like that.
There's
too.
probably a whole channel dedicated to that. Somebody had told me that it plays for 24 hours a day. It's an AI Jesus. You can ask Jesus what to do. Oh no, it's a Twitch channel. It's a Twitch channel that does that. 24 hours.
It never stops?
It never stops because people keep continuing coming in and asking it questions, which apparently are stupid questions, but it gives you an answer. And it's actually very smart because it would always keep people engaged.
Oh, it's AI though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought you were saying a person. I was
No.
like, how's that person alive?
I mean, they have to regulate their computer being on, but that's easy. You can just keep the computer on all day. You can set it to
AI
that.
Jesus, no.
Let's ask him. No.
Jesus, I got some questions, dog.
But there's a long list. And depending on the time, I feel like you come in at like 3 a.m. and there's like a few people up and they're like,
No,
hey man, can you send your address? You're pretty cool to talk to.
Can you send me a social, dog?
It's like, what if AI Jesus is just handing out socials? He's just like, yeah, this is Mark Rubio's social. And it just says some random numbers, and it's actually the numbers of the social, but we don't know if it's his, but it's actually Carl Weezer from 5th Street.
No, Mark is on there and he hears this. He's like, AI Jesus, why are you giving this out? How do you even have this information?
Well, it's AI Jesus. I mean, you take something that's becoming powerful and something that apparently is the all-powerful, and you put it together. Yeah, you got all the information. Yeah, he's taking down the government one day at a time. He's taking down your house one day at a time. He's making DIY videos to paint in your toes as well.
He said 5-minute crafts, sign me up.
It's like there's like a 5-minute ad break, and that's what he's doing. He's pushing out those videos. He's like, I'm gonna be #1, and that's all you hear in the background. And he's holding that little foam finger. He was #1.
You see Mr. Krabs like, what are you doing, boy? I kept seeing these pictures today on Instagram, and it had Mr. Krabs, and his head was smushed out, and he had no nose.
Well, wait, what was the context of one of them?
It was just like a random meme, but I was like, why
It's up
did
and
they
coming.
do that to Mr. Krabs?
I feel like there is like people throughout the day that are doing that are I mean, you have your memesters that literally watch. I mean, I have friends that literally have like 30,000 photos on their phone of just memes. And I'm like, that is crazy. I don't have one, nor do I send it to people because I'll see them. There was a moment of time, iFunny. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go to iFunny and I would look at them, but that felt like fucking decades ago, like at least like 3 years of like consuming that information. I just felt like I just fell off of that. Same with Vine. Like I was there for moments, but it did not happen with TikTok. It's so weird. It's the only one where I have not fallen into that. I don't know. Some just doesn't, it just doesn't sit right with me. Something about TikTok doesn't sit right with me.
I was like really against TikTok when it first came out, but the same thing happened to me when Snapchat first came out. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are using Snapchat? You're so stupid.
What were you using?
Nothing.
AOL. She's like, where's my fam at? It's like the 100 people left on AOL.
Where you guys go, huh? They're like, we're on Snapchat now.
We're on MySpace, actually. Join the squad.
We switched. Yeah, no, I was like so against Snapchat, and then I started getting into it, and now, I don't really use my Snapchat. But that was the same thing with TikTok. It actually used to be Musical.ly when I first started.
Oh yeah, that's right. I always forget about that one. I don't think I've ever even downloaded that app. Well, no, once. But I think I consumed one thing and then I threw my phone in the trash. Garbage disposal, actually.
Dang.
Yeah, I said, and then all you hear is, and there's a DIY video of that too.
You just hear the 5-minute crafts playing in the background, and then you're gonna grab a mark. Actually, they don't speak in them. Actually.
No, what they do
it's
is
just
they have
in
the music.
Background.
That's the
the
Wii.
Mario Kart. Music.
That is the Wii music, ma'am. You gotta know this. Wii tennis was our thing.
Be throwing arms out trying to play that tennis game.
We've almost thrown them at TVs for getting very upset. Especially during the sword battle. I don't know if you remember the game where it had multiple sports.
Oh, yeah.
I did not like the sword one. That one was annoying. That one in the frisbee, I'd be like, come on, get in there. I got 60 yards in front of me. And it would be like, nope. And then the other person would be like, they would be like Waluigi up on there about that.
Do you remember that game where you sat on the chair and you had to like ride town?
Yes, I don't know what it was called.
PlayStation.
It was, and if you didn't get it in time, they would capture you on. I feel like they were chasing you in chairs too. I think that was actually the case. Like it was some like chair rider, and you got to choose your chair. You also got to choose your character. I mean, if you got to mod the game, I would have chose Bibble Nation, which you could probably do.
Wait, but Bibble doesn't need a chair. He can fly.
Exactly. He's his own chair. No, it's a Bibble chair.
He's floating above the chair.
It would be like that.
People in the chairs behind him are like, how the hell is he making the chair move?
Good question. In Mario Kart, do you think that they floated above their chairs? Oh wait, no, never mind. Boo did. Boo!
Oh, yeah.
Boo did.
Boo was just floating there.
But everybody else, I felt like, was sitting.
Everybody else was sitting. Because everybody else had legs. That man didn't have any. He just had a tail and arms.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, that is weird. He didn't have any legs.
Well, the rest of the characters were like people except for Yoshi.
What if we end up finding out that Yoshi
He's a dinosaur.
Oh, I thought he was a human. I don't know why I felt like I had the same response with Ziggy that I did with him.
Okay, so we got a comment on one of our posts about us slandering Lazy Town. I just want you to know we are not. I love Lazy Town, but I did figure out the reason why he might be considered a human, and I think it's because he's technically supposed to be a human in the show. Like, everybody's supposed to be a human. I honestly think that they ran out of a budget. They hired Sporticus, Robbie Rotten, and Stephanie, and they're like, we can't afford any more humans. We're just gonna make the rest of them puppets.
This is actually fact checked by our brother. Because this was the other day where he was talking about this. They actually did run out of production money. And I was like, that makes so much sense. That's why they didn't air them with them, and that's why they had to use puppets instead. I was like, wow, that was the only logical explanation, and it happened to be it. I actually was surprised he looked that up. I think he had like lull time, so he looked that up specifically, and I'm like, wow. Even though we could have done it at any point, it's just, we wanted to believe.
I think we're too focused on the fact that people were calling them humans. And we're like, what do you mean? They're literally puppets.
Yeah, I wonder like the percentage basis of who actually thought that they were humans versus puppets.
I feel like it would be more little kids, but I mean, even me as a kid, I knew they were puppets.
What about today?
Questionable.
Questionable. They're absolutely human. I've actually talked to them.
It's Illuminati confirmed.
Yeah, the shows were crazy. It's like interesting watching the transition of shows as well too, like what people are exposed to. Like certain people don't watch horror movies. I'm not too afflicted by them, to be honest. Like, there are sometimes, where there's the uncomfortable ones to watch, especially with a larger group of individuals, because then you got nudity up in there, and I'm like, bro, I'm like, I don't know, like 16, and I'm watching it with like 40-year-olds. This is kind of weird. But I think also as you progress, it begins to change. But also other horror movies are just like, they will somewhat leave nightmares. I think I've had that maybe twice. I don't remember what the movies were specifically, because it's been a long time since I've watched like that type of horror movie. Like, I know the names of some of them, like Annabelle, the one with the doll, I remember that. Cabin in the Woods, but that one is the one that I was talking about where I was watching it with 40-year-olds. But it's a similar type of deal. But that one, I think I did have a nightmare on that one, but it was very brief. It wasn't anything that was like, oh my gosh. But outside of that, I don't know. I'm not too afflicted.
I've never had a nightmare watching a horror movie. I think I'm too fascinated by them.
I feel like you would play in a horror movie. That's probably why. You're there as like the doll that's swinging. Yeah, come in the house.
We saw a preview for a horror movie coming out in February next year, I think. And it's this little girl who has this stuffed animal bear that's her imaginary friend. Except that her imaginary friend keeps promising her, we'll get to play if you do all these things. And at first, they're like normal things like, oh, draw me a picture, or like go outside. And then they get to be really violent, where it's like, be in pain. And she ends up like, she like grabs this piece of wood off of the fence, and there's a nail sticking up out of it. And her mom is like looks out the window and sees her daughter, and her daughter slams her hand into the nail, and they like go on to this journey of like trying to save her daughter. And yeah,
save her daughter from the nail.
No, from the bear. They even have like
a bear?
A stuffed animal bear that's making her do these things.
Oh, that's what that was. I thought this was just going to play out where she's just endlessly hurting herself. I'm like, yo, they're taking this real seriously now. That actually could be very scary, because that has a lot of realistic properties, because there are kids that like aim at death whenever they're younger, because they're just shown that for so long that I guess it's just ingrained in their mind. Some of them, I guess, just come out and they're like, yeah, death upon things, and they're using a fire axe at the age of 3.
Oh my gosh.
They're busting open doors and they're going through missions, but they think it's all a reality, but they're playing on Roblox. I mean, that could be an exposure too. Like, what do you think about like kids having that access and ability to like games that have a lot of violence? Because I know Roblox does, although it is fun. The one that's natural disasters, you still die in it. So, I mean, what do you think about that? Especially like, let's say the group like 5 to 10.
No, no. I don't like how like young kids are, and they're getting like tablets and phones, and like you can like restrict stuff, but that's not going to stop them from like finding a way to see these things. There was someone I knew that would like restrict her kids' access on Netflix, and Netflix put in the kids section like like an inappropriate movie that was like supposed to be for kids, and she was like, this is not for kids though. And it's like, even if you like restrict access, they're still gonna find a way to watch things. I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up like without that type of technology, so I'm like, I know that like as a kid you don't need it, like you should be outside or like, you know, doing other things. But like I also don't agree with like full restriction. Like I know some people like restrict to the point of like no TV. And it's like, I mean, you have to have like a little bit of entertainment. Like it helps like you like creatively like think about things. So I don't think total restriction, but definitely they shouldn't have as much access as I know most kids have nowadays.
It does depend on parent to parent. Here's how I'd actually give the argument that they should. Although I would disagree, like as a personal basis, just because I don't like being around technology a lot, although I literally use my phone all day, but I do because of work. But outside of that, I tend to try not to use technology as much, or use it for, I guess, more productive purposes. Like I'll listen to audiobooks, like I was listening to one before you had got here. But here's why I think they should. And it actually has to do with the fact of like evolutionizing, because technology became very prominent whenever we were growing up. Like it started to skyrocket, because if we were to talk to our parents, they would be like, yeah, we didn't have that back then. And I think the progression is going to be more and more into that, where our generation of the kids that we're bringing are actually going to be in a VR world. And that a lot of the AI is going to be generated into that, because the progression of where our world is going is leading to that. It's all about how we handle it though. Because like, for instance, to discover like the cosmos and different planets, we are going to have to alter our body in some sort of manner to get there, because our ability to not have certain, nutrients without them, like for instance, having food and trying to go somewhere, that's going to be very difficult to regulate, because having to grow it on the ship, or having long lasting, or what if something happens to the ship? What if there's something that just regulates that, which they're actually doing, which I didn't know about this, but I was told the other day about that with the Neuralink chips that they have. And they're doing precisely that, and they're already doing human trials on it as well. Yeah, which is actually wild, but they got to that phase of that. And I think it will be important, like those people have definitely a high probability of dying, because it's just like any startup, it has a lot of risk. The thing is, the people who do sign up are most likely desperate for money. And that's how it goes. Like I almost signed up for, there's this clinical place, I believe it's called PPD, and you can sign up for clinical trials. But as soon as I got and sat in that room and I saw the papers, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many side effects that I'm like, nope, because I didn't need it that badly. But those individuals seek for that, because they also might believe that they're damaged, or they just want to help people, which is a very noble cause as well too. It's a mixed bag, because nothing is like perfect and absolute with it. I don't know, it's a very interesting concept overall to like think about. That's where we're headed. And that's why I think the development of the technology and the kids coming to learn that and be a part of that is actually very important. It's just, again, they're gonna see things that they don't wanna see. But I feel like as a kid, you also do that too. It's just, it's more prone now than what it was previously. Because you know not to walk in a dark alley at night. Like you just know that inherently once it's taught, especially as a kid. Same with the lights. You have to come inside, because when it gets dark, crazy things can happen. And they do, because you go to a city at like 3 o'clock in the morning, there's probably an ambulance somewhere helping somebody, and you just hear sirens all night long, because it gets more chaotic, because during the night people commit more crimes. And it's interesting, I've heard an argument that it's actually the fact that there was more light. Somebody actually argued that because it was lighter outside, they would commit more crimes. And he was talking about the moon, because when it's a full moon, it's brighter outside. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't people do that when the sun's out then?
It's the werewolves.
It is? Or the vampires?
Don't the werewolves come out in a full moon?
They do, but the vampires come out at night.
At night.
At night.
Night, 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 night. Oh, SpongeBob, so good.
It is. There's a lot of shows that were definitely introduced, and that's going to be something that's interesting with the kids too, like what they see, because I don't know if it's necessarily going to all be show oriented that they are going to talk about, when they get older, like looking back on. I actually think it's going to be like clips. That's going to be the big thing that they talk about, because like when Vine got large, it's still kind of talked about, but it wasn't something that was introduced as a kid. Because we look back on all of our shows and stuff that we've seen, they're going to be talking about like YouTube videos that they've seen. Because I've seen it. I've seen a 15-year-old watch YouTube. It's crazy, because they're watching a video that like 1,000 things are happening. They're doing so many cuts in the video, and then on top of that, they're doing that same thing that you were talking about. That's happening, but they're also on their phone. And it's like multiple consuming type of thing. I don't know if I wouldn't say it's necessarily good or bad. It just depends on, the intent of that as well. Because they could be furthering their character that's in something. Like, I think of the VR world of like what they're going to do. Like, I feel like if you're given that opportunity to go into that world, you can actually just permanently go in there. And there's a movie that represents this actually, where they like inject them with something and they're like in a chair, and then they go to a specific memory and they literally feel like they're in that memory and they have to complete the task in there to move to the next one. And that's what helps build the AI and create society. It's not Inception. I don't remember the name of the movie. It was very crazy though. It's this woman throughout the movie, and at one point she's actually trapped in a box, and she feels like she's going to be there forever because this was in real life. They did this to her. They locked her in this place where basically she would get food, but she was in like, you know, it wasn't it was an all white place actually. Like you feel like in SpongeBob when Squidward goes through all that stuff and he's just in a white room. He's like, hello, hello. Or when people are in those foam padded rooms in real life, it was like that. And a lot of people cannot last in there, as I think we've also talked about. So that conception of that is what they're going to try to create. They're going to create different events and people are going to have to complete them. And that's what helps build power to the AI because the people are putting that in. Just how AI was created. People put in all that work to create something that works for them. Like Alexa is kind of where a portion of that started. But then you have the metaverse and all of these different sectors. And it's fascinating but scary at the same time because you can have somebody who's aiming for pure evil and wants to just destroy society. So they're going to try to trap you in there.
Saw 2.0.
Oh, that's beyond Saw 2.0 right there. That's a whole nother thing. But yeah, that was a lot of talk on TV shows and movies though.
Yeah.
So there's a lot out there and there's a lot that still can continue, but I just think limiting a certain amount of consumption to it is just like anything. You don't want to eat too much like candy as a kid too, because then you'll just be throwing up. You can't have that conception with shows if you're always like, you know, continuously binge watching and going to other things. But it depends on your hobby as well too. I just think that the life that we are presented here is also very important too. Like today, sunset, absolutely amazing. Sunrise, absolutely amazing. Me and our brother were talking about this, and he was like, it looks like Caesar's Palace. Like the inside of Caesar's Palace, because it's orange hues with like the blue backdrop of the sky and the shape of how the clouds are. It almost looks like you're in there. And then I said, all you need is the cigarette smoke.
I feel like Caesar's Palace wasn't as bad. I think it's more when you get into the casino part is when you start to smell
it 100%. That's the same with the MGM.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of those casinos I think have that same basis because you're allowed to smoke in them, which is one of like the few places except for bars that like are like, yeah, that's fine and acceptable there. But that's the transition of like what is acceptable and what is not socially too. And that can be problematic in some ways because you take something like smoking cigarettes, that's had a loophole of what they wanted to happen. I think we've talked about this before, same with the fluoride thing. Like they get to choose like as a collective, like somebody starts it, somebody's that tipping point and everybody else will start to follow depending on who that person was. And you can never go back to identify them. Some people, like it is big companies sometimes that do it. That's what I was listening to within this book. I learned a lot of information that I didn't know about like what companies do, like Goldman Sachs. Whenever they're trying to plant a tree and have the tree day, they went out there for an hour, didn't do anything. And the person who is the like head of Goldman, he wasn't even there. He was late an hour and they didn't even end up planting a tree. They just got their pictures that they needed.
Of course.
Because the idea is their conception of what they want something to be seen as is more important than the actual thing itself, the thing that actually is valuable. And I think it's a lot of like a pride and a lot of power. And he describes it as a magician's trick because you start off by showing them the thing, the bird, the rabbit, and then the next thing you do is that you hide the thing. You're like, where did it go? But the most amazing part is like what comes back out of it. And some of the examples that he had based off of companies were just amazing what they would do because it's a whole thing, which I do not want to get into that because I need more conception on that. It goes into like the harder topics of like what happened in 2020 and I'm just like, whoa. And I would like more perspective on like, you know, opposite sides of the realm too, because what he's running as a Republican. So I want to hear what the Democrats have to say about that specifically, because how it's explained is like crazy, because I can see that happening, because that's where like business starts to become a problem. And I thought about this today. I was like, the soap that you use is important, because once that company starts to grow a lot, they find the cheaper product, because you want progressive development capital wise. So you're going to use products that are worse, but that ends up affecting the consumer. Because then the consumer is buying that product thinking that it is a good one because they've used it for years, but not realizing that they've changed standards. Because when are you going to look up the standard of like what Dove uses in their soap?
Yeah,
And them
I mean,
updating
you
it.
wouldn't.
Nobody wants to see that boring information. They're not going to go through a nutrition fact sheet and do all that. And it's not even that. It's like there's
Nutrition,
hidden
are you
stuff.
eating it?
Absolutely. We had to eat it as kids. It was munchy.
Oh.
We didn't really. I think I did.
I did once.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Once, yeah. And it wasn't like I took a bite out of it. It was just like you had to like lick it.
To the audience, she did.
Actually ate a whole bar of soap.
Okay, yeah, we got that on recording. You saw that.
No, but I feel like a lot of, not even just like companies, a lot of like celebrities or influencers do the same thing, where like they don't want to get canceled by people, so they'll make it seem like, oh yeah, I'm all for this thing, or yeah, I'm all about this thing. But like with time, like your actions speak louder than your words. People are going to start to realize that like you're not actually about what you say. You're just doing this so that way people accept you. Although canceling has become a bigger thing, where like it's almost better to get canceled. I think some people have said like bad press is still press.
Yeah, because they will still have some aspect of the audience that follows them. The problem is it starts to create those bubbles. They call them echo chambers, where these bubbles of people just agree with them even though they don't agree on all of the things. And that's the issue, because that's separating everybody. That's not bringing everybody together. That's doing the opposite. And that's why the differences of belief, again, the communication back with all of those things is important. And he had talked about this as well in this book, because he was talking about how all of that separation had began. Like, I guess his theory and his seeing of it. Because, I mean, he worked for Goldman Sachs at one point, and he got to see that aspect of stuff. And it's just amazing, because a lot of individuals will, change up the way of, what they believe in. They change, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, are you following that because somebody else is telling you, or are you following that because you've actually thought and you've had reasoning and you went through like the different options on it? And I think that's a harder thing for individuals to actually come to, because it requires you to think. And that's the exact opposite of what, whatever you want to call the higher power. You can call it government, but even at that, there's still going to be good people in government. It's just whoever's trying to be in control of where things shift.
I think a lot of people don't like to change their opinion just because they like to be right. But I feel like if somebody has like a valid point and you're like, oh, you know what? I never really thought about that, or I never really thought about it that way. Like, it's okay to change your opinion on things. Nothing's like set in stone. That's why an opinion is an opinion. Not everybody shares the same one. But I feel like people are just like too prideful to be like, oh, you know what? Maybe I was wrong about this thing. And I feel like it's also good to like educate people, because I feel like, especially when it comes to like influencers or celebrities, like people tend to like not like educate them in like a productive manner. Like you'll hear people be like, oh, you suck, or like you should just quit, like, like just nasty comments, versus being like, hey, I didn't really like think that like what you did was okay, and they explain why, versus just like bashing them, because that's not productive, and that's not going to help someone be like, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong. That's just like going to make them mad, and it's not going to make them be like, okay, well, maybe I should try to see your side of it. But you see that a lot with them, like people just being rude. But I think like if you educate someone and they still don't like, agree with your opinion or whatever after that, then it's like, okay, unfollow, stop looking at their stuff, like move on from it, because bad press is still press.
Yeah, and that's where finding like the truth becomes harder as well too, because when you start creating all of these different webs, you have to follow the webs, and that means you have to read documents that you don't want to read, things that like are absolutely uninteresting, because it's like I feel like more people would read fiction over nonfiction in total, especially as a kid. You don't want to be over here studying the periodic table of elements and being like, yeah, arsenic does this. But there are going to be a few. But again, majority is not going to think that. They're going to be like, yo, did the Backyardigans come out with a book yet? And because
it's on your Amazon wish list.
It is. We can pull that up right now. It's every book that the Backyardigans has put out, which is only one.
Wait, for real?
No, I have no idea.
I was like, do you actually know that?
I feel like they have books. I don't think I've ever written.
Wait, you write for the Backyardigans?
Yes, I write for the Backyardigans. Keep that noted. I am Pablo. I'm a
Wait,
penguin.
is it Pablo the blue penguin?
Yes. I got a large beak.
You just start wobbling.
Pablo is also bald.
You're almost there.
I'm getting there. So I think he does have like a little bit of fuzz up there. I think it's yellow fuzz.
Yeah.
I got yellow fuzz too. But that's where we're going to end off with. Thank you for joining in today. I feel very good about this one, that I am Pablo, and I am inheriting that, and I'm putting that in my will, that it's going to Pablo.
All my money and all my belongings go to Pablo.
Yeah, so keep that noted now that it's on this time script. I wonder where they'd actually send it though.
They would send it to just some random Pablo. He'd be like, dang, I don't even know who this Spencer person is.
Or go south to the South Pole and find a penguin. Just throw the money at him.
Wait, they're like, delivery for Pablo. He just comes wobbling up and he's like, here you go. And then he just tucks it all under him like an egg and he just waddles back to his group.
He's making millions.
It's actually Happy Feet's brother.
Nope. I don't want to be associated with him. Keep that noted too. But thank you all for tuning in. We have all of our socials linked. We'll have Spotify at the top this time, just so y'all are able to see it on there, because I know a lot of people are Spotify users. It's just a better area to see podcasts. I mean, I also listen to it on audiobooks, but I got to figure out how to get on there. Also, people are using Apple and Google Podcasts too. So we'll have it on there too. I just know that, when you go to the big guns, you got to have more equipment necessary. But I think this is episode 6. So, it's moving forward. Also look at, if you're not interested in seeing the whole thing, we do have clips as well too. Check out the medias, and we have more coming. I was thinking about the t-shirts, and we were coming closer to that. I was actually doing some research into that. I'm trying to find the right type of thing, because when I have a product, I care about the material a lot. I read the nutrition facts and I look into this information. Okay, I'm that nerd.
And he eats the shirts.
Yes, and any boxes. If you have any boxes, I'm a recycling center. Thank you. But thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time.
Yeah, bye guys.
Right there by your side. Can gangsters cry?